Hello again, it's been another week and we've had another couple of cards revealed for the new Twilight of the Republic set for Star Wars Unlimited. So we'll have a look at, once again, just a couple of cards, so a nice quick video today as well, just like the last one. But before we do, just a quick shout out to the guys over at Planning Phase Syndicate. This is a US-based group of guys who play Star Wars Unlimited and X-Wing. They've got a podcast and I helped record their last one just yesterday. We had a bit of fun making a tier list of all the current leaders in the game. When it comes to like meta-analysis and all that kind of stuff, I really do defer to these guys. It's largely thanks to their content that I both got into the game and started making my own content. So thank you so much for inviting me on. Had a blast. Hope to work with you guys again in the future. Indeed, they've already talked about getting back into making X-Wing content again, so I think I might try and slip my way into that at some point. Also a reminder, we have Onyx Unlimited coming up in Australia next month. This will be on the 14th and 15th of September. It's organised by Onyx Squadron, a group of gamers who are responsible for some of the push for larger tournaments for X-Wing as well as now Star Wars Unlimited. Still early days from FFG in terms of what they're doing in terms of larger scale organised play, and this is kind of a push to say, hey, let's start doing this kind of stuff in Australia. Early signs are really good. The numbers are looking fantastic. We do have some support in terms of official prizes from the local supplier. Just a heads up though, the promotional Grogu card now has been fully allocated because we've gone over the player threshold for that, which I think is a good problem to have. So if you're available next month in Canberra, please come along. It's going to be an awesome event, and yes, let's start enjoying some real proper scale tournaments for Star Wars Unlimited in Australia. So once again, let's have a look at these two cards in order of least to most hype. There's only two, so let's start off with the one which I think is going to be a solid draft card, but probably not a staple in terms of constructed play. This is Aurra Sing. Great to see a card for her in the game. A 7 cost ground unit, 7 power, 6 health. She has the keyword Overwhelm and also the ability, when an enemy ground unit attacks your base, ready this unit. And I think this is just fine in terms of power level for, you know, a 7 cost card in just red. It's not a double pip or anything. It doesn't require you to be in either villainous or heroic. I think out of all the 7 drop red cards, and there's not a whole heap right now, she is by far the worst. We're comparing this to Mace Windu and Pre-Vizsla. Yeah, I think both of those are sort of really pushing their strategy, really pushing the game state along, where Aurra Sing is a handy board stall to have late in the game. I think a lot of people are evaluating that second sentence as though you're likely to get multiple attacks per turn, and I just don't realistically see that as being the case. If your opponent is going to attack down your base with knowledge that Aurra Sing is going to re-ready herself, they probably have enough firepower to push through and defeat your base regardless. Essentially what this second sentence is kind of bad Sentinel. And I find from a design point of view this card to be very interesting because what it's teaching us, the players, is a key element of color identity. Red does not get access to Sentinel. The only red unit in the game that has the word Sentinel on it is this one, and it gets rid of Sentinel. Red is the color of aggression. Sentinel is purely a defensive keyword. So we can sort of get a similar effect. We can punish your opponents for attacking your base when this unit is on the board, but we don't get an effect that just stops them outright from doing it. It responds in a very aggressive way. It's a very clever workaround, this actually. I like the way it sort of does Sentinel in a red way, so to speak. I don't see Aurra Sing as being a staple in any particular deck, but perhaps in a bounty hunter deck that wants a ground board stall strategy late. Maybe she's a decent sideboard card from that point of view. So long as you already have enough aggression to really capitalize off her re-readying herself. It is a little bit narrow, but decent stats, and look, even bad Sentinel is bad Sentinel. I'm not saying that's a bad thing overall. I just think compared to regular Sentinel, this isn't quite as powerful. Not a bad card by any stretch of the imagination though. But with that, let's move on to the real hype of this video. Consolidation of Power. This is an event, a 6 cost command and villainous card. Choose any number of friendly units. You may play a unit from your hand if its cost is less than or equal to the combined power of the chosen units for free. Then defeat the chosen units. So in terms of what this is doing, it's kind of like a quasi-exploit mechanic, except this doesn't reduce the resource cost. This can clearly do a lot of really busted things. The ceiling on this card is quite scary. It does rely on your board state. Just be aware of that. I am seeing a lot of comments on social media of people saying like, oh, I can sack 3... what's the example I saw? Like 3 Death Star Stormtroopers and get a Cryot Dragon. You've got to line up that situation. You've got to have the right cards in hand, and you have to rely on your opponent not removing your units with 1 health. That's a bit of a magical Christmas land scenario. Not necessarily impossible, I'm not saying that, but I would advise people in general not to try and rely on that kind of situation happening. Don't play into it too hard, because you might get blown out pretty badly. Having said that, I think the versatility on this card, I think the way it can cheat things into play, there's too much potential for this not to do something at least very interesting, potentially really, really busted. Apart from anything, the flavour is on point. You're literally consolidating your power. It is great, flavourful game design. I do like that. I don't think we're going to be wanting to use this card to like accelerate out your 7 and 8 drops. Like I can't really see this being used to play a Darth Vader unless you're really, really desperate. You know, perhaps you happen to have all those cards in your deck anyway, and in some rare circumstances you'll do that. But I think ideally you're going to want to see this card in a deck that can sort of accelerate out like the 9+ drops and just do really, really silly things like that. You can also combine it with on-defeat triggers, like the new battle droids we're seeing. The Death Star Laser Technician, the one that ramps you, gets you more resources. That could be pretty cool. Plus, you can kind of break the symmetry on this too if you have a card like General Veers, which increases the power of all your friendly Imperial units. It doesn't have to be Empire, but any kind of Lord effect like that, that across the board increases power, could be quite good. In terms of the kind of decks we want to see this in, I'm kind of personally torn whether it's going to be like just good all-round value mid-range decks that happen to have a bit of good decent top end that has enough power in its lower end creatures to play it, and you play this as like a random value card which might occasionally go off, or you lean into it and you try to go off with, you know, certain combos and that kind of thing. Maybe we get like 2 or 3 similar kinds of effects that cheat units into play, and we have like a deck that can ignore aspect taxes, all that kind of stuff. So in the comments, please, if you have any idea of like specific unit combinations, like what kind of deck we want to use this in. I just feel like this is too broad not to do anything at all, and it's also a fairly open game design card. It can potentially combo with things that come down the line. Right now, I do feel like, though, in those solid mid-range decks that just want to play powerful units and accelerate stuff out, just the units that have exploit printed on them is probably going to be the better option for those decks. You don't need the combination of cards in your hand, just the one creature that has decent stats with exploit. I think is going to work better in those decks just as a good, solid, aggressive game plan, where this really needs the cards to build around it. So yeah, again in the comments, what do you think? How can we use this to break the game of Star Wars Unlimited in half? With that, thank you all so much for watching. Sorry this video is a few days late. I imagine in a few days we may have another couple of cards revealed, so stay tuned for all information on that. Don't forget, I do have a Discord on there. Totally free to access. Don't need to join a Patreon like that, so if you want to come hang out, talk about all this kind of stuff, talk about X-Wing, the future and where it's going with that kind of stuff. Really having a lot of fun engaging with both games right now. It's a good time to be making content and just hanging out and playing some games. So with that out of the way, I'll catch you all in the next video.